Hey everybody, Paul Collier here. Today I'm here to talk with you about objectives and key results. I found a co-effect because I want to help small and medium-sized nonprofits really establish the fundamentals of their data practice in order for them to learn, grow their impact, and grow their organization over time. And one of the common questions that comes up all the time is, how should our measurement and learning practice relate to our organizational goals? So, objectives and key results are one of my favorite organization goal setting tools. And in this introduction video, I want to share just the high level concept and hopefully give you enough to use these tools. And then I've got a few other videos in this series that will go into a little bit more depth to really help you optimize how you use objectives and key results. So, as I mentioned, we're going to start by just talking about what is an OKR, an objectives and key result today. Then in other videos, we'll talk about writing effective OKRs, measuring them, aligning them, and how to implement these in your organization, avoiding traps along. So with that, why don't we get started? What the heck is an OKR? So an objective and key result is really a system for setting, communicating, and rating your goals. So here's an example, and I'm drawing this from the organization I used to work for, a nonprofit that really supported families and children and wanted to make sure that we're preventing all child maltreatment in a particular city. So, for example, one of their objectives might be, we want to make sure that every teacher in our county knows the signs of child maltreatment and can practice good judgment when engaging with child welfare. So the key results for that might be, one, updated or mandated reporter training to discuss implicit bias and examine what qualifies as neglect. Maybe the second key result, we're going to launch an online portal for supporting mandated reporter training by the end of Q2. Key result 3, increase the number of teachers trained by 30% compared to last year by the end of Q4. So some things you'll notice about the system for setting goals: the objective tends to be subjective, it tends to be ambitious. And then the key results under that objective tend to be quantifiable. They allow us to know whether we've met that objective or not. So OKRs are really a tool for implementing strategy. Your objectives and key results don't create your strategy for you, but they do help you do the things that follow from your strategy. So setting direction for your organization, planning and budgeting, leading and managing your team. They really are a tool for helping you prioritize what actions are going to help us move our organization-wide strategy forward the most effective way. And I really like this format for structuring goals for the following reasons. There are really 5 superpowers of OKR. You can remember the acronym FACTS, FACTS, and this is what differentiates setting goals using objectives and key results versus other systems for setting goals or intentions for your organization. So the first is that they help you focus on the most essential goals. They force you to really narrow into what is critical and not create goals for everything. The second is that they help you align and connect for teamwork. They can connect different levels of your organization. The third is that they help you commit and keep committing to priorities because they create a system for communication that makes those priorities clear and front of mind for everybody. The fourth is that they help you track for accountability. So by setting measurable key results, you can actually pull the data and see how you're doing on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis for even the most ambitious, the most qualitative objective. And then the fifth is stretch. So they help you stretch to get amazing results. Objectives and key results are a framework for really setting stretch goals that you might not exactly know how to achieve and break that down into meaningful chunks. So here's the critical parts of an OKR. So the objective is, what are you trying to accomplish? For any organization or any level at your organization, you will have 2 to 5 objectives at a time, and no more than 5 is recommended, because if you get more than that, too many priorities means no priorities at all. So these are qualitative, ambitious, pithy goals, like build a high-performing goal-setting culture, for example. For each objective, you'll want to provide a quick description, like, why does this matter? So maybe that goal-setting culture is important because clear goals will unlock the potential of our teams. It's often helpful to be clear about the alignment. If you've got multiple levels of these kinds of goals in your organization, at each lower level, you need to argue, why does this align? How does this align to the higher level goals? It really helps people understand why these things are important. And then finally, the key results. These are your hows. These are your quantitative time-bound success criteria that define done for the objective. Typically, you'll have 3 to 5 key results for each objective, and I've shared some examples here. We'll have some more examples in the next slide. So there are 2 major types of OKRs. One are committed OKRs. These are objectives that represent a commitment that you fully expect to meet 100%, and you need to meet it 100%. And then you've got aspirational OKRs, and these are objectives that typically represent big, hairy, audacious goals that you don't expect to fully meet, but you're going to set because they are directionally helpful to your team. And so I'd provide a comparison or contrast here. For example, a committed OKR might be, we need to fill 100% of our objectives and goals stated for all of our nonprofits grants, and then, break that out into a few components. Compare that to this aspirational OKR. Let's imagine that we are a housing provider. Our objective is to become our city's most trusted provider of transitional housing. So that is a really big aspirational goal, and it's pretty qualitative. How do we actually know we're achieving that? Well, maybe, one, we need to select a public relations partner. 2, we need to get good data from our residents to understand how well they trust us. 3, we need to make sure that we are doing our job in terms of public relations so that the community trusts us and get stories placed in outlets. And 4th, maybe we need to achieve a very high resident satisfaction score. So not only does the community know about us, our residents also trust us. So OKRs will align to different levels in your org. Often you'll have organization level objectives and key results. And maybe one of those key results, that's an org-wide key result, becomes the objective for a department. They define key results under that, and maybe one of their key results becomes the objective for a team. So you can see that there's alignment, and often you're setting this organization level objective first, but you're getting feedback from other levels along the way. So let's talk about the review cycle. OKRs follow a review cycle, and it can be quarterly, it can be annual. Most organizations start with an annual cycle that looks something like this. So if you're following sort of a calendar year goal setting process, you might set those top level OKRs in December, set lower level OKRs in January, track progress from February to November. And then you'll sort of have a scoring point or a review of those formally in July. And then you'll have a final review of those the next December to set the next year. Speaking of scoring, so OKRs should be scored, and how OKRs are typically scored is that whatever your quantitative key results are, you translate each of those key results on a scale from 0 to 10. So 10 being we've knocked this thing out of the park, 0 means we have accomplished nothing. And so regardless of what your indicator is, like we want our survey satisfaction results to be 90%. If our goal is 90% and we hit 90%, that's a 10 out of 10. If we get, somewhat less than that, then it's somewhat less here. So putting everything on a 0 through 10 scale allows us to really compare these very different quantitative metrics. For an aspirational OKR, these stretch goals, a 10 is definitely exceeding your expectation. And realistically, a 7 out of 10 is still probably exceeding your expectation. 4, 5, or 6 out of 10 is meeting your expectation, and 3 or lower is typically below what you were expecting. Contrast that with a committed OKR. So remember, committed OKR is a goal that we expect to fully meet. So we sure as heck better be getting a 10 or a 9 out of a scale of 10 on those key results. Anything less than that is below our expectation. So very helpful to score these things on a common scale, despite the variety of metrics, and helpful to differentiate between these two things. So that's what I'm going to share for today. These are the basics of objectives and key results. And I found this a super helpful framework I use for my own team's goal setting, for my personal goal setting. And I advocate my clients use it because it's fairly easy to understand and it's fairly flexible. In the notes, I'll share a few examples as well as a template that you can use for writing your own OKRs. And then the rest of the videos, we'll be talking about some of the nuances of using OKRs, including writing, measuring, aligning, and actually implementing these tools. Thanks again for your time and attention today. Hope that this is a super valuable resource for you. Give me a shout with any questions, and I'll see you soon.